There is one thing that it is true for Monster Hunter Wilds, and is that the lower rank in this game is one of the easiest that you have in the entirety of the franchise. However, some monsters are still some kind of annoying, and having to choose which weapon are you going to be using for leveling up can be quite of a headache as well. Have in mind that a lot of the recommendations that I'm going to give you in here are still going to remain being true once you enter into the leveling for high rank. However, we're probably going to have a separate video for that, because once you enter into high rank you have new monsters, and also the weapon tiers are going to somewhat change. So this video is focused to give you an idea of the item or weapon progression for the longsword that you should be having, the ideal one. Remember, it's very easy to go through the main story, but if you're struggling or you want a couple of weapons that you can be using without having to farm that much, this is the right video for you. And we are going to start right off with the Hope, Edge, and the Ore tree. These guys are going to be your best friends most of the time, because for these weapons you don't necessarily need to fight any monster. You only have to farm mineral materials and you're golden to start hunting. So I can't stress enough how good it is for you to use either the Iron Katana or the Hope Katana. These are very good choices. However, when it comes to the skills and when it comes to usability, well, they are nothing that amazing. They do have green sharpness bar, so that's an extra little plus in here. But here's where we're going to start into the juicy of everything. Out of all of the monsters that you are going to be fighting and the weapons that you want to be crafting, which one of this guy is the best one of them all? Have in mind that a excellent choice, something that is going to guide you on how to get a very good weapon, is going to be the equipment skills that they have, the information of the skills that they have, because some of them, they might come with very cool weapons, but you're wasting like on its entirety the skill. Like for example, a lot of people might like Punishing Draw, but I think that it's one of the most useless skills in the entirety of the game. It requires for you to be sheathing your weapon for this to work, and essentially what Punishing Draw does is that the draw attacks deal a medium amount of stun damage and gain attack +5. I believe that this doesn't work with the AI stance, correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't actually work on the previous games. So for this attack to actually work, you have to actually sheath manually your weapon, and that is not something that you want to do, especially with new gameplay changes that you're going to have in here. So even though that it might be good to have a weapon with fire element against fire enemies, fire weak enemies, you should avoid this like a plague. Instead, like I said, remember, this is not like a build video. This is focused to give you the most powerful things for you to level up, and that is actually going to be the Rumpopolo tree. As soon as you get this, you should craft this as soon as possible, because as a matter of fact, you are going to get it quite early on. This is one of the first bosses that you are going to fight once you reach the 3rd region of the game, but it's not going to take that much time for you to get that. It's just a couple of monsters that you are going to fight, and I cannot stress enough how powerful this thing is. And I actually used this to level up on higher rank quite a little bit as well, because when it comes to damage, it's just tremendously amazing damage. As you can see right here, for example, the Hope Edge +3 that we would get from the minerals right there, it has 429 damage. This one has 462, but on top of that, it has the element of poison. Poison is universally going to be useful unless you're fighting something that is resistant to poison, but poison is going to be tickling damage that is going to be working for everyone. And thanks to how many inputs can you have with the gameplay of the weapon right here, this is just amazing. On top of that, this has Power Prolonger, which I believe it is going to be somewhat of a must or somewhat of a meta, and if it's not going to be the case, at least it's going to be a very important skill that you're going to have to use to some extent to override some skills that are not going to be that much important. So what is the Power Prolonger? Well, essentially, it boosts the duration of the weapons while they are powered up. And with a proper playstyle on this weapon, if you want to maximize the amount of damage that you want to have with this weapon, this is like one of the playstyles that I like to adopt. I advise for you to watch my video for the Longsword. You don't want to actually be using the Helm Splitter once you reach the Awakened Spirit Bar of the Longsword. As a matter of fact, you want to leverage that as much as possible. You get so much mobility, you get so much damage, you can spam the parries as like a maniac, and because of the mobility, you almost become a god while you are on the Awakened Spirit Bar. But for that, you're not going to be able to be filling it up. It's going to be diminishing constantly. So having the extra power prolonger in here is going to be a game changer for you to be able to be in that stance as much as you can. So yes, this is one of my favorite weapons, and as a matter of fact, this is what I believe that you should be carrying through the entirety of the game. If we discuss some extra options you want to take advantage of the enemy resistances, the Windclaw Blade is actually quite nice because, as you can see right there, it has focus. And focus, what that does is that it allows you to charge your Spirit Va that much faster, which is going to be to some extent in a parallelism with this guy right here, although I like this one better because it allows me to stay on the Awakened Spirit Bar that much longer. Then we have the Chematrice Lima in here, the Chematrice Lima 2 with the Punishing Draw. Like I said, you should be avoiding that like a plague. And then we have the Ray Tonitrus in here that has Focus and Punishing Draw. It has a good skill and a crappy skill. And then we have the Donna tree. This is actually very powerful because it has power prolonger, it also has water, and it has one of the highest damages when it comes to the low rank that you are going to have before you actually reach the rarity 4 level of the weapons. So just to wrap things up, I believe that the weapon that you should be using, it should be something that it has a nice skill like power prolonger, and ideally it's going to be either the Klanda. It does have negative affinity, but at this point you don't really have like a build that is going to take advantage of affinity, so you're not going to have to worry about that much. All you need to worry about while you're leveling up is damage, raw damage, as much damage as you can. This one is going to have lots of damage. It has power prolonger, which is going to increase your DPS, and also the Rumpopolo. But the Rumpopolo is that much better because you get this very early on the game. Once you level up, you're also going to have access to the Iron Katana in here and the Wyvern Blade Ash as soon as you reach the Rathalos. You should avoid this like the plague. Well, not necessarily. It is somewhat of a good weapon because it has decent affinity, it has decent damage, it has lots of elemental damage, but this is a weapon that you should be using once you're able to establish a build. You're not going to be able to that much craft a build, and this is also going to be focused for a affinity builds because it has critical element and it has Master's Touch. However, then again, like I said, you don't have that many means of building up your affinity while you are on low rank. There are not many armors that you can be using to build up your affinity. There's not many things that have expert or that have weakness exploits or things like that. And the critical element, it's basically, it takes advantage of that skill whenever you're dealing critical damage. So what do you know? You're not going to be dealing that many criticals with this weapon. And the Master's Touch is also going to reduce the amount of sharpness that you lose whenever you deal damage with a critical hit. And that's an 80%. So first you have to bypass that 15% chance of dealing the critical hit damage, and then you have to bypass a 80%. So it's not really worth it. Like, both of these guys are being wasted. The critical elements might be cool sometimes, but it's just going to be proccing 15% of the time. Instead, my advice is that as soon as you actually reach the rarity 4 level of the weapons, you should be using, this is the one that I was using, and this is the one that carried me throughout the entirety of the second portion of the somewhat high rank of the story. This is the Dasha Crate Cleaver. This is the highest damage that you can reach. Yes, it has negative affinity, but what do you know? We're not actually going to be dealing critical damage, critical hits while we are leveling up on the main campaign because we don't have means. Like I said, I cannot stress that enough. Once you reach into the higher rank, you are going to be able to build into those critical hit damage builds. It's not possible while you're on the main story or while you are on the low rank, because there's just not that many gear that you're going to have. You're not going to have that many decos. Some gear are not even going to have deco slots, so it's not going to be possible for you to level this up. But then again, so that's why we don't care about the minus 15 affinity, and this is the highest damaging weapon that we are going to have. And what do you know? You get this weapon as soon as you're in the middle of the main campaign, so you get it very, very early, and it's going to carry you through the entirety of the campaign. It also, what do you know? Beautiful in there. Did you see? It has power prolonger. It has power framing prolonger. So it not only has like a huge amount of a crap ton of damage, so your hunts are going to be like 5 minutes or 6-7 minutes. It's just going to be nuts. But you also have like all the DPS, the raw pure power DPS that you want to in here. So that's my recommendation for weapon progression. If we actually narrate it down, there's a whole bunch of options, but if I tell you what I use while I was playing through the campaign, I just used the Ore 3. As soon as I was able, I was using the Rumpel Hacker, and I kept my Rumpel Hacker all the way through the Dasha 3, and that's what carried me throughout the game. Just 3 weapons, and I didn't really have to farm anything, and I was killing things in like 5 minutes because of how powerful these weapons are, and because of how general these weapons are, because also since this is not an elemental weapon, this is a weapon that is going to be effective against any type of enemy, because no one is going to have like any specific resistance to it. If you like the content, like and ever super appreciate it. And also you there, you got to use a beautiful person. You are in there, gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, have a beautiful day. Goodbye.